Thank you for being here this morning, Flora.
Good morning.
I appreciate your time. I want to start with what arguably was the biggest issue for the county board over the past year, and that is mental health services. So as a challenger, I'll ask you what your opinion is of how the board handled that issue over, say, the last year.
My opinion is that I didn't see that the Board of Supervisors took the time to really study the issue, to really see the impact it would have on the citizens of Woodbury County and also the taxpayers, the amount of money. I really don't think the supervisors know what services that are really provided through their mental health dollars, and they didn't take the time to really research that so that they could see and make a very informed decision. I also didn't see a great deal of attempt to work with Sioux Rivers people. I know there was contention there with the Sioux Rivers people, yet I didn't really see that there was real effort on Woodbury County's part, and I'm sure it was both ways for them to work collaboratively together and to iron out the issues. One of the things that I think we have to keep in mind in the smaller communities, such as counties such as Sioux and Plymouth, a handshake, it pretty much is as good as saying, yes, we're going to do it. And in Woodbury County, we're more urban and we want more information and we want more collaboration. And I don't think the two groups understood that about each other, and I don't think they've given themselves time to work that out so that they can identify that, so that they can make good decisions. Because right now, being with Sioux Rivers, Woodbury County has the largest percentage of people that are being served, and we pay, I believe it's 73% of the money. We're getting more bang for the buck, and I can't remember the exact numbers off the top of my head, but Sioux Rivers is paying more for the citizens of Woodbury County, and I'm thinking we're getting a deal here, so to speak. So it's like, why do we want to leave that? And I've gone to some of the the Rolling Hills meetings. I went to one, and I think we're going to have to put $1 million in a cash reserve, and we're also going to have to share a larger population. So I'm concerned that the citizens in Woodbury County may get less services than they are receiving now.
And that was going to be my follow-up, was what do you think the end result of this move is going to be for Woodbury County? Perhaps a degradation of services?
Yes, I know that there are 4 areas that are on that are subject to termination, and I can't remember them all off the top of my head. I had them yesterday if you would have asked me, but I know ARC, the program that they provide for children with mental and physical disabilities in the summer, that may be cut. Also, there's a program that provides medication for people that can't afford their medication, that may be cut. And there's another one. And the Sanford Center, that one is on there too, but there's another one, and I apologize that I cannot recall that at this time.
What do you, in your opinion, think is the reason why this board pursued this course? In other words, do you think they were well-intentioned and as you said, perhaps didn't do enough homework, or do you think the reasons were not so well-intentioned and more perhaps personality-driven, conflict-driven, and perhaps could have been worked out, those conflicts, with a little more effort?
I think it was more conflict-driven. That is my opinion, and from what I've seen, and I've spoken with some of the supervisors in Sioux and Plymouth County, and I found them to be receptive, at least towards me. But And I was thinking maybe we could work this out. If I'm elected, you know, we could work this out and remain with Sioux Rivers. I don't know if the damage is done, but I think there's been conflict. It's been personality conflict and strong personalities on both sides, and opinionated personalities. And unfortunately, it's people that need the services that will be the ones that suffer the consequences.
Next issue is guns in the courthouse. Another divisive, controversial issue. What's your opinion of how this board handled that issue, and what in general is your opinion of allowing guns in the Woodbury County Courthouse?
First of all, I do not think private citizens should have guns in the courthouse. I took a conceal and carry class, and I think, you know, people have the right to bear arms. But, you know, I'll be honest with you, I have the license to carry, but you know what? I'm not instructed very well with a gun, so I do not carry. I do not carry until I get more instruction. But I've worked in juvenile court services. I've gone to court with different family members, and I just don't believe that we should have guns in the courthouse. It could become volatile and someone could get hurt. I don't think private citizens should be able to carry those in the courthouse. I think we're looking at two different issues, the right to carry, and the right to bring a gun into the courthouse. And I think that's a no. A no-no in any court building. In the federal building, you cannot bring a weapon. Even law enforcement have to check their weapons in the federal building. So why would we want to bring those into county courthouses or county buildings when things get volatile? I mean, sometimes there's family disputes and people do not like what the judgment may be. People get upset. There's custody hearings. There's all kinds of things that go on where people just get upset, and I don't think, you know, that's the place to have it.
The way the system is today, you support that, so you would not advocate for changing that. They have the one entrance and you go through the detectors, and they have law enforcement there handling that door.
Yes.
And that's the best system in your mind that we should have, and you wouldn't propose changing that?
I wouldn't change it. Yet I also get concerns because we still have like the Trausper Hoyt Center building, and I don't see, you know, law enforcement in there or, you know, any type of screening. But I know they do have they have the protective glasses in different places, and I know when there's courts, juvenile court services, they may have a deputy there in the
That's a good
courthouse.
point, though. Do you think that's something the county should look at, is improving security in other county buildings aside from the courthouse?
I do. I really do. It's not just
Trausper Hoyt being one.
Yes.
Probably the largest.
Being the largest.
Additional county building to the courthouse where large numbers of people are conducting business.
Right. I think we need to look at that. I think we need to work with the Sheriff's Department to see if we should expand it. I think we should, but I think we need the Sheriff's Department's input before we make those decisions.
Do you think this board is a good steward of the tax dollar? And in your mind, what constitutes being a good steward of the tax dollar? And you have, of course, a lot of experience of being a steward of tax dollars by virtue of all the years you spent on the school board. So in your mind, if you're a good steward of tax dollars, what does that mean? And is this board a good steward of the tax dollar?
Okay. I think being a good steward of the tax dollars means that you set a budget and you adhere to that budget, and also what you do is you hold people, department heads, accountable, and you ask those department heads, what is it can you live without? I think one of the things that has happened is that we have not been good stewards because lately, because of the spending, I think there's been more spending lately with the taxpayers' dollars. I know back in the spring, there were people that came out and they complained about their roads on Buchanan and out in the rural area. And I'm not saying we don't need to repair those, but we had the supervisors hadn't raised the budget in the engineers department for over 4 years, so they're behind in the services that they can provide. That's not good, being a good steward of the money. The other thing is that when people came before the Board of Supervisors, all of a sudden the money was there to pay for the resurfacing, not resurfacing, but they put oil on the roads and put in all of a sudden to buy gravel. Now they're talking about doing all the county roads and spending $25 million. We don't have that kind of money to just boom. And I don't think it's a good thing to borrow $25 million right now. I think we need to look at and prioritize and work with the engineers department so that we can prioritize and budget in a reasonable manner for that, for taking care of the taxpayers' dollars, and taking care of those roads. So go ahead, you had a question.
No, I didn't want to interrupt. I was just going to say, you made mention of increased spending. Are there particular areas where you believe they've overspent?
Well, I think, okay, when they did resurface the roads out on Buchanan, on the east part of Buchanan, they weren't sure where they were going to get the money from. You know, so they took it out of another pot, and I'm not sure which pot they took it from. Denny Butler is awesome with their budget. It's a great budget. It's one of the easiest budgets I've ever seen to read. But I think, you know, we've had some excess spending with legal fees. The legal fees for the Sioux Rivers, that has cost us like $46,000, and that's been outside legal fees. We did not use the county attorney's office for that. And there's a couple of lawsuits that are going on that the couple of the supervisors are being sued for different issues. I think it's harassment and age discrimination, from what I read in the newspaper. And those legal fees are like $76,000 so far. I think that's money you could use elsewhere. So I don't think that's being a good steward of your money, because and I know sometimes with county governments, with governmental entities, you get sued, and it's easy to sue governmental agencies. But I think some of this could have been prevented. I think a great deal of it could have been prevented, especially when you have discrimination and lawsuits or harassment lawsuits. Those can be prevented.
This next question is somewhat related to property tax dollars and the budget, etc., and that is the additional revenue the county is going to realize as a result of the CF Industries expansion. Quite a lot of money in future years. Beginning perhaps, I think, next year, they will begin to derive that additional revenue. What would your priorities be for the additional money the county will get from the CF project?
Well, I think one of the things, we do have to repair the roads, the gravel roads, and put some money into the engineers department. But I also think we need to look at more economic development, and also keeping property taxes manageable for people. I mean, you know, Woodbury County, our property taxes are high. And we need to make sure that we're not raising property taxes just to raise property taxes. But so I think we need to use some of that money from CF for, you know, property tax relief. But I also think we need to take some of that money and look at our departments and see how we can assist our departments with that, which will also in turn help with property tax relief. The other thing that what I will say, and it goes back to your other question, one of the things that is happening too is that some of our supervisors are starting to spend that money now. It's like taking a credit card and saying, well, we can do this because we have the CF money. Well, we don't have the CF money yet. So I don't think you can spend that money before you get it. I think you can plan for it, but I don't think you can spend it before you have it in hand. And I know it's coming, but I'm one of those people, until I see it right here, I don't like to go out and spend it.
So you would say that property tax relief, that sounds like it would be, perhaps if you were compiling a list, that would be number one for priorities. You don't have a long list of spending projects
No.
in mind that you would propose.
No.
That would be your number one priority.
Property tax
bring some
relief.
relief to property taxpayers.
Right. And also just to look at economic development. I don't know if you have this, but you probably do, but someone gave me this report that the county had done a few years ago when Jackie Smith was still on the board, and Mark Munson, and it's called the Woodbury County Envision Plan for 2050, and they talk a great deal about economic development in Woodbury County, in the entire county, and collaborating with all of the cities and in Woodbury County to use their tax dollars to do different projects within Woodbury County.
That actually was my next question, was what steps do you support and advocate for in terms of county government for expansion of economic development?
You know, and I would like to see if we could utilize some of that CF money to do some economic development. We have agricultural base has kept Woodbury County afloat over the past years. I mean, our employment rate has been low for a long time, even when other parts of the country, their unemployment rates went up, and ours kind of stayed at about 4%, 4 to 5%. But in the rural areas, there's opportunity out there. I went out, I visited every city council in Woodbury County, and with doing that, you know, those communities want to see growth, and they want to see, you know, businesses and jobs in their areas. And we need to look at that to see if we can seriously do that. I went to Odo, and that is one of the poorest cities in our county, and it was sad. You know, and I'm not, the people love their community, but that's part of our responsibility as supervisors to help Odo grow. And their population continues to decline, and I know people move away because of employment, and I know people, you know, they're older and people die off, but we need to help those folks out there in the community.
Part of economic development, at least the discussions in Woodbury County over the years, part of that discussion is focused on the idea of a mega site certified by the state, where you would acquire land, and I think to be a mega site certified by the state, you need 1,000 acres, contiguous tracts of land. That seems to have stalled. There doesn't seem to be a lot of momentum for that idea today. What are your thoughts on what the county should do, can do, in terms of pushing the idea of a state-certified mega site for economic development?
I don't have a great deal of information about that, but I think we need to bring it back to the table and start looking at it and see where we left off when there was energy behind that conversation, and let's see what we can do. I mean, the county has hired David Gleiser as their economic development director. Let's move it. We need to do that, especially in the rural areas.
And what I said isn't a criticism, because I understand it isn't easy. You don't just snap your fingers and acquire 1,000 acres of land. I mean, you have to have people who are willing to sell land.
Right.
And you can't force someone to sell land. So I'm not suggesting it's an easy do, but I know it has been discussed through the years, and it seems to have sort of plateaued, and there doesn't seem to be a lot of movement today on that topic. And so I was just curious if you felt that new life should be breathed into that concept and advocated for it.
I do. I think we need to have the fierce conversations about it and come to the table to have those conversations and see what we can do. Let's see if we can move this. Because if we create economic development, that also helps keep property taxes lower.
Do you have any ideas of, have you thought about this, about areas or ways in which the city and the county could work together for consolidation of services to save taxpayers money? Are there areas within government that you think are ripe for that kind of cooperation and collaboration that stand out to you?
Well, I think, you know, when we look at purchasing oil and gas, also when we look, there's things that we can purchase together, also working together, and I know this happens, law enforcement, the city and the county, the sheriff's department, they work closely together. I also think that maybe doing something with snow removal. I know the school district and the city, Sioux City, they help each other with snow removal. So some of those weather-related projects that are going on. So those are just three that I think of off the top of my head.
What are your biggest criticisms of this board, and in particular your opponent? Do you have any that stand out that you want to talk about this morning?
You know, first of all, I want to say I'm running for the citizens of Woodbury County. Jeremy Taylor is my opponent, but I think this board, they talk about transparency, but I don't see that transparency. One of the things I've noticed is that when I go to supervisors' meetings, some of the more hot topics come in committee reports, and so the information is not there for you to see. It's not on the website. It may be handed out only to the supervisors at the meeting, and you have to ask for that information if you want a copy of it. So I don't think that transparency is there as they talk about transparency. I don't think, I don't see that this board really thinks out issues and really asks for input. I think they make many knee-jerk decisions just to say they've done something without looking at what the impact may be on the people that they serve. So those are my biggest criticisms. I think the other thing that I think with Mr. Taylor, I think he's good at spinning. He spins topics, and he does that well. I have to give him credit for that. He does. He spins well. I thought, gosh, he should be in D.C. because I think, you know, he does a good job with that. He talks a lot and says nothing sometimes.
Example?
Where were we? Just a minute, let me regroup here. Okay, I was at the supervisors meeting, and they were talking about the $25 million that they would need to refurbish all the roads out in the county. And he continued to talk and talk and talk, but never really came up with specifics about what he could do. So that's what concerns me. You know, if you're going to, you know, say this is a good idea, be specific about what you think, or just, you know, what my ideas are. We can do A, B, C, and D. And I think he just talks a lot of times. He talks frequently, and he doesn't really have any idea about where he's going.
What would your biggest priorities be if you were elected, say in the next 4 years in your first term on the board? You had a top 2 or 3, let's say.
One of the things I would do is that the first thing I would do is we have to make sure that our employees are not afraid to talk to supervisors, and our employees are not afraid to make mistakes. Because when you have employees that are afraid and they're cautious and stressed out on the job, they don't perform well. They don't perform at 100% or more. So I want to do some work on making sure people feel safe and comfortable in their employment. And then we also look, and this has to happen simultaneously, is to work with Denny Butler on looking at, and each department head at their budget and looking at making sure we're spending tax dollars wisely. And all of this happens simultaneously. So those are the two things that I would do right away.
How are we, Tim?
5 minutes, exactly.
Okay, good, because I wanted to give you an opportunity, wanted to make sure we got this question in before we finished, an opportunity to just speak to why you believe you are the best candidate in this race, and why the voters should replace Supervisor Taylor with Supervisor Lee.
Okay. I believe because I have experience, my experience on the school board for 12 years in the capacity of a director, vice president, and president for several years. I also am one that I do my homework. I listen to people and hear about what the needs are and other solutions, because I don't live in certain areas. So what I mean by that is that I don't live at the courthouse, so I need to know from the people that work there what works best, and it may not always go their way. And what I mean by that is that when I've gone out and visited the different communities, I've said, hey, I don't live here. You have to tell me what you need, what works best. I don't know anything about farming, but I learned a great deal about hog farming last week. I learned a great deal. And so I was asking the farmer, what could we do out here? Because I'm not a farmer, so I need his input to know what to do and to help make good decisions to make things happen in Woodbury County. So I think that's one of the assets that I have also. Also, I try to be, and I work real hard at being a good steward of the taxpayers' money. I don't like to spend money just to be spending money. I don't like to do it in my pocket nor anyone else's pocket. And I think I take better care of other people's money sometimes than I do my own. And also, I've been involved in this community and served on many different boards and organizations for several years. I also know that you have to collaborate with people and that you have to also combine your ideas in order to get something done in this community. I think Woodbury County is a wonderful community to live in. I've been here all my life and I want to see it better. I've invested a great deal of my blood, sweat, and tears in this community, and I am tired of Woodbury County being the laughingstock of the state, because I do travel around the state in my employment, and people say, what are you doing there? We're better than what we've been getting, and I want to.
Why do people believe we're the laughingstock of the state?
Because of all the infighting that we've had with the supervisors, with Sioux Rivers folks, and even with the supervisors fighting amongst each other. An example, when the gun issue came up, two of the supervisors Jeremy flipped on that. Matt Ung thought he had the vote for that, and that they were going to pass and allow guns in the courthouse. And Jeremy flipped on that. And what I mean by flipped, he changed his mind and voted no. And then those two had conflict after that. They were fighting among each other. So, we can't do that. This is not personal. I don't believe it's personal. We can agree to disagree and then we move on. And, we don't have to be enemies because we don't vote the same way.
I think we're just about out of time.